I've known her since she was 19, so that was a moment for me. I'm just gonna, my talk's very short, and sort of a second part. I came to digital archives and then to the Color Conventions Project by walking a path this symposium's title illuminates. Thankfully joining a scholarly community just able to publicly say it was dedicated to preserving Black women's history and material culture as a recognizable field. I'm a student of Barbara Christian's, and she was turned back the way Anna Julia Cooper was turned back in her dissertation topic when she was told that Black women were not a subject, right? That were worthy of a dissertation, that there wasn't enough material, right? So, and I remember being told this about Harriet Wilson too, that I couldn't possibly really include her as a chapter when I was an undergraduate. Just earlier this month, CCP's first partner in the arts performed an hour-long piece called Women of Consequence, Ambitious, Ancillary, Anonymous, which we helped them to craft. And it includes a section on women in the convention movement and a suite called Three Harriets, about Harriet Jacobs, Harriet Wilson, and Harriet Tubman. In the program in that program, this appears. There, in type that hides history as well as communicates it, are Harriet Wilson's birth and death dates. You can barely see them, they're right up there. And her birth and death dates appear. And these were dates that no one knew just 10 years ago. They were dates I was blessed enough to recover on a research trip with Reginald Pitts to Boston and Quincy, where she is buried, and to New Hampshire for the Penguin Classics edition that we co-edited. Seeing those dates on March 15th, which was her birthday, which was the day of the performance, took my breath away. Birth and death dates. Like the rest of her life as an entrepreneur and religious speaker, as a woman whose name had been embossed on thousands of bottles of hair care products I've brought today. I don't really need to do this, but here they are. That we also did not know about. And seeing the ads that Kathy Flynn and I discovered together, which appeared in tens of thousands of ads more than 50 years before Madam C.J. Walker became famous, these dates, the most essential facts of her life had disappeared. Whoosh, gone. Her dignity stolen. Then recovered and made indisputable by a scholarly community that refuses to see Black women's agency and activism erased, that insists on marking the importance and centrality of when and where they entered, just as the Julia Cooper Digital Project is doing today. Sometimes individual scholars do this work. I think of Erica Armstrong Dunbar and Ona Judge, of Alice Walker and Zora Neale Hurston, of Jean Fagan Yellen and Harriet Jacobs, or the forthcoming work on Zilphil Elah by Kimberly Blackett. Who do you think of here? And here I'm serious, take out a pen or your phone and write down the names of someone who's resurrected a Black woman from a life that ends in someone's White House North, in a slanted Edenton attic, or in an unmarked grave. Write down, write down. Who do you think of, a scholar or a woman who has been resurrected, a Black woman who's been resurrected? I'm gonna call on y'all. Y'all know it's some call and response stuff, so you know you need to be about this. All right, we ready? All right, say her name, literally, into this room. Let's call them and welcome them into this room. Thank you, thank you. These are our national treasures. If we want to activate this work of spiritual and historical recovery, and we shouldn't, be shy away from saying that this is spiritual recovery work, because intellectual traditions are very clear, right? Sort of white hegemony is very clear about the fact that this is a spiritual and intellectual, right, assertion of agency and subjectivity. So we should not shy away from saying that we too are recovering both spiritually and historically, right? A process of redignification, right, to bring Anna Julia Cooper's words here, especially in the digital age. I believe we need more than individual labor, as powerful as that can be. To counter the ways in which women have been erased from the history we were partners in producing takes a certain kind of looking in, through, around, and against the archives, to quote D'Angelo Bridges, who I think is here, right? One of Dr. Turner's graduate students. To do the work of digital recovery takes teams, and those teams, those librarians, archivists, IT specialists, and graduate student leaders, those who are taping us now, right, as well, are best structured by ethical imperatives that link them to the work of the justice advocates we're seeking to identify and study. To avoid replicating the very way our subjects' labors have been erased, we might best create structures that are not hierarchical, but are horizontal, and we might pledge to say and record the names of the collaborators upon which this work and community building depends. Carol Rudisell, stand up. Curtis Small, Denise Berger, Brandy Locke, Molly Collins-White, the CC members who are with us today alongside our colleagues Jesse Erickson and Allegra Taylor, who will be joining us next year, and those who are not here with us, Jim Casey, Anna Lacey, David Kim, Ethan Barnett, Allison Robinson, Kelly Coles, Keith Jones, Caleb Trotter, and others who couldn't be with us today. Thank you. Scholarly ethics as the all-white panel of presenters. Come on now, really? Oh no, we can do this, hold on, from the current slide. Oh, and not from the current slide. Okay, now y'all gotta do like some other kinds of slides. Slide, why don't you slide? Everybody, is that the right words? I have lyricosis. Yeah, hold up, you say, oh man. Okay, it looks like the other ones didn't show up, that's all right. You gonna help me up? Thank you, baby, I appreciate it. All right. So as the Stanford, so there's, imagine a picture of 30 white men behind you. You can do that, right? Okay. Scholarly ethics as the all-white male presenters to a Stanford Applied History conference earlier this month. It is just the latest to illustrate, are not best put into practice by people's goodwill or largesse. That is, by practices that often collapse when confronted with time constraints or limited networks, and, may I say, just plain laziness. As a digital project with practices that seek to mirror the distributed multi-site nature of the conventions themselves, we also seek protocols of friendly accountability, memos of understanding and principles of use agreements, and CFPs that formalize the ways in which we center Black women in a set of proceedings that includes the entire pantheon of Black male leadership and banishes all but a few women to the archival hinterlands. CCP asks national teaching partners to sign MOUs and to have their students include women as the central partners we know they are, as their cities readied for hundreds of convention participants to enter their churches, their homes and neighborhoods where they're needed to be housed and fed in a process that called for fundraising, community organizing, and infrastructure building that undoubtedly included women as central members. Our exhibit guide requires women be represented in the exhibits. The 1,500 students across the country who have embarked on original research through the CCP curriculum write bios on women affiliated with the male delegates whose name appear on page after page, while women in the records often remain anonymous and ancillary. And here I want to acknowledge Ben Fagan, whose class produced 2 of those exhibits, which you can find on CCP. And he often credits his students, right, for that work, and sees himself as a vessel and in that. Anonymity is precisely what got recorded in 1848 minutes when the long-term delegate Abner Francis traveled from upstate New York to a national convention held in Cleveland with his lady. That's in the minutes, with his lady, and was refused a first-class ticket. He recruited the presiding convention president, none other than Frederick Douglass, to return to the station to be again rebuffed. Advocating for equal treatment and transportation, the convention entered into the permanent record a unanimous shout. Now we know where we got shout out, right? A unanimous shout against the clerk. Identifying him by name in the minutes, they made certain that he was, quote, fairly ostracized. The clerk is named, but who, I wondered, was Abner Francis's lady? So I did what anyone with expertise in historical research does first. I Googled him. And with wife, what came up was a well-researched entry on Sidna E.R. Francis, who was no one's no-name travel partner in her time, but rather the president of the Ladies' Library and Progressive Improvement Society for Buffalo and more. What did I learn by following the story of an anonymous woman, as project protocols direct me to do? The women not only opened their homes to delegates when conventions were held nearby, but they accompanied their husbands and probably their brothers and fathers and pastors to conventions. And then I noticed something quite amazing, to me at least. The information appeared in a single Google search because it turns out Heather Sinkinson studied with Dr. Kimberly Blockett, one of our earliest national teaching partners, who following our MOU had her students turn to databases, to the Black Abolitionist database and the growing and rich secondary literary literature to find associated convention women. 3 years later, I followed the all but silent archival lead, and because of that protocol, that rule, that guideline, there was the puzzle piece waiting to be clicked into space. Providing protocols of engagement for publics and students helps to stitch historical scraps and patches together across temporalities and space that print technologies and plain goodwill cannot facilitate. Amassing not only an archive but historical narrative so that cultural ancestors take their rightful places over time and space. In a way that Harriet Wilson and Anna Julia Cooper and so many of us are conjoined with someone like Lucille Clifton when she says, "Won't you celebrate with me? What I have shaped into a kind of life. I had no model. Born in Babylon, both non-white and woman, what did I see to be except myself? I made it up. Here on this bridge between sunshine and clay, my one hand holding tight my other hand. Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed." Thank you to our historical ancestors who survived and waited patiently for our coming to reassure us that we do have models to follow and contest, to study and place in conversation. We are not the first. Congratulations to the Anna Julia Cooper Project, and thank you for bringing us together today to celebrate and to embrace all the textures of feeling that word carries for us as we recover our lost and found worlds and works and digitize them together. Thank you. If anybody wants to see bottles.